The idea of this build is simple. All of the power from the modifiers and all of the XP bonus from the directives with none of the bad. This is your M1A rifle XP farm build. Let's get into it.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
This is the second XP farm build I've made this season because I want to make sure that you are geared up for what's coming. In 1 week, we have the 5x XP event. That is massive XP. Use this to level up your watch to 1000 and stack up massive points so that you have the resources you need to optimize your weapons and roll into expertise, if that's your thing. The other XP farm build I made for you is a 100% hazard protected build using the 1886. I wanted this one to be just as powerful, but provide a little bit different play style and value. It's centered around the classic M1A, which got a buff to its base damage, and some of the mods for this weapon also got a buff. So it's super powerful. It's back on top. It's not the highest base damage the 1886 is, but this one is doing almost the same thing as the 1886, but it's got the luxury of a giant mag and a faster reload. What's also cool about the M1A is that you have the option for a scope. Now, I prefer to play with the scope. This build is not required to use a scope. I think it helps a lot because for some of the activations, we do need to land shots on the head, and having the sights there to help you zoom in is nice. As a backup, the reflex sight for 12% weapon handling is really good. It also got a buff. For the grip, we're running the angled grip, which is 30% stability, and that got a buff. And then we're running +5 rounds. I have 12% expertise on my M1A. That's the minimum I recommend you put on any weapon you plan on using regularly. And then we have crit damage and damage to targets out of cover. The talent we're gonna run is determined. This is going to synergize with the build, with our talents, as well as the modifiers, and bring tons of survivability. Determined is amazing for XP farming because it helps you kill squads faster because you can go center mass and it counts as a headshot, which means that's decreasing your time to acquire a target and to eliminate them. So after killing an enemy with a headshot, the next shot landed on an enemy will be a guaranteed headshot. And so with all of the buffs and the modifiers that they brought to us in Season 2.0, we can now do things that we weren't able to do with our classic M1A, like chain kill and one tap even the tankiest of bosses. So this build is hitting somewhere north of 40 million, depending on how exactly you run it. Now, I'm running 1.3 million in armor. You can run more armor. I just got tired of farming for pieces as I was configuring this build in several different ways, but this is what I landed on. Let's pause on the build because we need to get into an important detail, and that is thresholds for hazard protection. Why are we talking about this? Well, for Season 2, because of the modifiers and also because of the directives that they're bringing us, the enemies have special ammo. For the modifiers, you have shock at long range, you have fire at short range, and then nothing in medium range. For directives, they have special ammo, and that's going to depend on the faction. I play against the True Sons a lot, so they're going to have bleed ammo. Here are the thresholds for status effects. So you need to hit these numbers in order to be immune from the status effect. They're all so close to 90% and above, you might as well just go to 100% if you're there. But with this build, we didn't have to, and it was actually to our benefit not to, because it opened up some additional options on the build and makes it easier to have different variations of the build. So what I've done here is given us a very specific immunity, and that immunity is to shock, which is at 86%. So shock is coming from the hostile modifiers, and it is absolutely destroying the player base's impressions of modifiers. Very, very bad. I mean, it should be removed from the modifier system, but it's here. So we have to deal with it, and we got an answer. So with the shock, even if you're blind firing from cover, if one of those bullets hits your weapon or your hand, it's gonna stand you up. And then you're gonna get hit with another shock round and another shock round, and we get stun locked until we're dead, which all happens in a matter of seconds. And there's really nothing you can do about it. So you can be partially immune to shock, but the problem is that these enemies hit really hard. So even if you're partially immune to shock, the continuous damage from XYZ NPCs that are surrounding you is what's gonna eliminate you, not the shock itself. So even if you're standing for a second, it usually ends up being bad timing. You're gonna get wailed on. And sometimes whole squads have shock ammo. So the shock ammo is deployed at long range. The fire ammo is deployed at close range. We're going to be partially immune to the fire ammo. That one's not as much of a threat because of how this build is operating and the synergies around the build, so it should be rare that you catch on fire. But if you do, it'll just be a blip because you diminished its duration a lot with the hazard protection on the build. We have 60% hazard protection locked into the build. So that's going to give you 60% resistance against bleed, blind, burn resistance, disorient resistance, disrupt, and ensnare. All very helpful. For shock, we're at 85.6% shock resistance. Now, we should actually be way higher than that, but I have crappy mods. A while back, I junked all my God-rolled shock resistance mods because I needed space, and now I'm regretting it. So you probably have better mods than I do. I have just literally scrapped together mods from the crafting bench. So my mods are at 8.5% out of a possible 10. Can push this up higher, but you don't need to be. So there's so much more to this. But what I want you to know right now is that you are immune to shock, and then you're slaying everybody with a single shot. Absolutely wrecking enemies and raking in massive amounts of XP. Very fun, very effective. For the gear set, I decided to run with aces and eights. So that's gonna give us 15% marksman and rifle damage, and then 30% headshot damage, and then Dead Man's Hand, which is going to give us 30% amp damage when we get our stacks up. Once you're locked into your chain killing capabilities, you're not getting much, if anything, from Dead Man's Hand. But I decided to just go ahead and roll with it because it does help sometimes when we're on our cooldown with our modifier. We'll talk about that later. But it's just a little bit of an advantage. But I looked around. I didn't want to run Hunter's Fury because I wanted this one to hang in there at range. And that's one of the big differentiators between this and the other XP farm build. The other one with the 1886 is very much in your face and run and gun. But this one, I wanted to be a little bit more tactical with it. You can hold down the single spot in cover and clear the entire area. You don't have to run and gun to get your buffs. But if you want to play more aggressive, like I end up doing anyways, just because it's my style, then the build works that way too. And I still like running it with the 8x scope. I don't feel like it's super zoomed in, but if you do feel like it's super zoomed in, go ahead and take off that scope if you need to. All of our pieces are basically going to look like this. So I have armor and hazard protection. For the gloves, I got weapon damage and hazard protection. For the knees, I got weapon damage and hazard protection. Finally, for the holster, it's weapon damage and hazard protection. Now, I'd probably add a little bit more armor on this, maybe even all the way up to 1.9, but I just got tired of farming for the pieces. I made so many different variations of this build, I just decided to settle here because it was working. But if you feel like you want more armor, go for it. You should be okay. I mean, we're hitting at 40 million. So the kill that's most important here is going to be that first kill. With the M1A, it's not as big of a deal because it's okay to hit him once and then cut his armor in half and then hit him again for the kill shot, as long as that kill shot's on the head, and then go to town. Okay, for the chest piece, we have Palisades. That's giving me 10% armor on kill. I have armor, headshot damage, hazard protection, shock resistance, and then Headhunter. This is really important. So we're looking for that 1,250% buff on our headshot kill. And if you look at our stats here, we're at exactly 150% headshot damage. The scope is helping there. You should know that. So if you don't run the 8x scope, you're going to drop to about 120. It might make your initial kills a little bit weaker, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal. We're actually at 300% headshot damage, but the other 150% doesn't show up on paper. For the backpack, you know I'm running my favorite. It's the Memento. Really because I'm looking for the bonus armor out of this. The weapon damage is there when you're at full stacks. It's 30%. We are getting weapon damage buffs every time we pick up a trophy too of an additional 20%, but we don't really need that damage, so it's just a nice to have. And then there's the armor regen at 3%, but because of the directive, no armor regen, we're not getting that armor regen. So I'm playing into this mostly for the bonus armor and also the skill efficiency. So on this build, I am enjoying the Fixer drone at 30% skill efficiency is going to give it 30% more duration, 30% skill haste, as well as 30% more repair skills. So all that's coming into play. That's sort of replacing the regen that I don't have. Otherwise, I have a shock resistance mod here. You don't have to use the Memento. The Memento isn't driving the build. If you are going to stay in cover, feel free to run Bloodsucker on your backpack for getting bonus armor that way. If you're going to do that, you could run 2 pieces of Bellstone and get the regen and a 10% armor on kill. For my other skill, I'm running the Decoy. I recommend that. My skill choices are based around the directives. For specialization, I decided to go ahead and run Gunner to give me another 10% armor on kill. So we're at 20% armor on kill with the Fixer and the bonus armor. So the bonus armor is at 30% bonus armor on kill every time we grab a trophy. This is a lot more than it seems because we're just killing enemies so fast. They just don't have a chance. Every now and again, you can get pegged and pinned down a little bit, but I'd be surprised if you die more than once an hour. With this build, you should be good to go. Let's talk about the modifiers because this build is taking advantage of these and really cool synergies going on here. So the global modifier, we're gonna get 1.2 to 1.5x amplified damage. So we're gonna be playing into the 1.5x at long range, mostly. That's 150% amplified damage, so we're clear. I'm going with all out. This allows me to lock in at long range and take advantage of that damage. How all out works is like this. So you want to acquire your target and then hit whatever button you need to activate all out and then kill that target inside 10 seconds to lock in their range. So you want to be very intentional. So with these builds, I usually pack around a sniper so that I can lock in that long range because that's the range that I want. With this build, you don't have to, but the sniper just guarantees that you're going to get that kill because if you do it with the M1A, when you put out that first shot, if it doesn't kill them, then they start scattering like roaches. It still works, but that first shot, you're usually sneaking up on the enemies anyways, so you might as well use your sniper. By the way, you can run sharpshooter with this build and it still works. I actually prefer sharpshooter, but I decided to run gunner because I know a lot of you are probably going to want that extra 10% armor on kill. But I like sharpshooter because I like to do this part with my TAC 50. But the Nemesis is okay also, and that's what I'm doing it with. The White Death will probably also get it done too. So once you lock this in, All Out is going to give you more damage at 5% per, I think it's half second basically. And that goes up to 300% increased weapon damage. So that's where your numbers start going crazy. But you'll see a jump go from somewhere around 6 million on your first kill straight up to 30 million on your second kill. And then it starts hanging around like 40 million. The passive modifiers, the most important one is Tapper. So headshots is increased by 150%. That pushes us to 300% headshot damage, but this isn't gonna show up on your stats page. That extra 150 is only for long range. And so that's why we're locking in at the long range. So we get the benefit of a full 300% headshot damage. But there is a cost, and that is a decrease in body shot damage, only at long range though. So if somebody's in your face, you don't get a decrease in body damage. Here's another synergy. So the multi-zone passive modifier is bait and switch. So this is gonna get 12% hazard protection for each enemy in short and medium range. If we look at the hostile modifier called Master of None, at long range, they got shock ammo. We're immune to that. At short range, they're gonna have fire ammo. And we are 60% immune to burn. So for each enemy in short and medium range, add 12% for 5 seconds. So 12, 24, 36. To be burn resistant, you only need to be 91. So if you have 2 enemies in short or medium range, you're basically there. And that's why you hardly catch on fire. And if you do, it's only for a blip. But the other truth of this build is that you're killing so fast, they don't have much of a chance. If they're in short range and landing shots on you, it's probably because you're in a reload. Otherwise, they should be dead because you're one-shotting everything. And that's the idea of this build, is to blitz control points. You activate your active modifier all out in the long range and clear the entire thing in under 3 minutes. The whole takeover and defend part. That's how good this build is. So once you get into a rhythm, you'll be able to do that too. For the passive modifier, this one's a flex slot. I just decided to take weapon handling at short range because it's based off of our headshot damage, which is going to be at least 150%, or which will be 150%. So that's going to give us 75% weapon handling. Think about that for a second. And so our reloads are going to be quite fast. So I recommend you getting this build in great shape for our XP farm event. Most of these pieces are actually pretty easy to get because Aces and Eights comes with a red core, so you can just roll on the hazard protection. So the hardest part about putting together this build will depend on how many blue cores you decide you want to run with at the end. So get out there and kick ass. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for hanging out with me today. My name is Tuxedo Bandido. That's Tito Bandido.
What's crack-a-lackin'?
This was another episode of The Division 2. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss out on the fantastic experiences waiting for you in The Division 2. And if you like builds like this, check out the recommended build video I have here for you. If you have anything you want to see covered, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make everything everything possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy. Now maybe this cheapskate can afford to sign me up for that dating app I've had my eyes on.
Follow me.
I get it.